Welcome to the Max Out Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Larry Whitman, sometimes known as Doc in the mindset world. I say I do this podcast because I've been blessed over the last 20 years to work with some of the greatest teams, leaders, coaches, and athletes in the country. So I love to share what I have taught them and what I've learned from them. I always say that my definition of maxing out is giving the talent, the experience of the athletes and the coaches and the intangibles. Can a team reach the limits of their capabilities? And then can they do it under pressure? Because I always say, if you can't do it when it matters, what's the point? And obviously my guests know that I also have opportunities to have special people on the podcast. And so when that occurs, I like to spend more of my time hearing from them. So before I tell you who she has a pretty unique story and we're going to get into it, but she has been all volleyball for a long time. And one thing I can tell you is that she was, and she'll tell her story more, is that she went to Pepperdine University where she played both beach and indoors. As far as I understand it, is the first person to ever be All-American in indoor world and the beach world. And then crossed into that world called the national team where she was on it for many, many years, since 2013, world championships, bronze medals in the Olympics, and then obviously culminated by a gold medal here this last summer. Also, lots of world championships and VNL, FIVB, lots of professional teams. And then there's this next part of her journey that I'm not even going to tell you about here, about what's next that she's going to get to share, which is really cool as well. So I'm really, really, really lucky today to have Kim Hill on. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun journey because I know a lot of people that you know, even though we've never talked. And something I didn't tell you just when we had met earlier, which is probably 5 times a week, I talk about you because I show videos that you're in, and because of your journey that we'll get into, the different roles you've played and what you say about them are the impactful things to me, because I always say it's the non-technical things of anyone's sport or craft that separates them out. You gotta have enough talent or it doesn't matter, but it's rarely the talent that wins it all. You have to have that as a necessary, but then after that, it becomes all the other non-technical or intangibles. And so, Kim, when you heard my definition of maxing out, what are your thoughts on maxing out? What does that look like to you?
I guess to me, it's giving your team every opportunity to be their best and not leaving any stone unturned in that way, and using all the tools available to you. So obviously, like you said, it's not just a physical thing, it's the mental game, and just really bringing out the rag and using every drop possible. And I think our national team is probably a great example of doing that the past year or so, but we can get into that later if you want.
Yeah, I love that. Leaving no stone unturned. I say that so often to teams, that when you get to the end of the year, you want to make sure you have no regrets, which means you left no stone unturned. You may fall short of your goals, you may exceed your goals, you may reach your goals, but there's nothing better than getting to the end and knowing that there's really nothing else you could have done because you left no stone unturned. And there's nothing worse, in my experience with athletes and teams, than when they have regret. And that can be regret that lasts for a long time. So anyway, I love that you use that phrase, leaving no stone unturned. There's a book called Chop Wood, Carry Water, which I love. But he has a chapter in there called Leaving No Stone Unturned. It's all about the little ingredients of success and making sure that you're committed to all of them. So, all right, for those, I'm sure many, many people in my audience know who you are. They certainly know your team, but they may not know your journey. I hinted very slightly that where you played at college, but could you share with us just a little bit about your background from the time you grew up to how you got into volleyball to how you ended up at Pepperdine?
Yeah, I grew up in a family. I have 3 sisters, so there's 4 girls. We all played sports. We all played basketball, soccer, softball. We did it all. I was big into basketball and soccer, and then I reached a point where I grew a ton, and on the soccer field, I was way too slow and tall and everything. My parents kindly encouraged me to try something different. So my older sister played volleyball, so I jumped into that, started playing at age 13 or so. I went to a small high school, played there. I'm from Portland, Oregon originally, so not a ton of high level volleyball there, especially 15, 20 years ago. So it was all a new experience, exciting. Like I was on a good club team, but not a great one. You know, I was lucky to have a good coach who really guided me through like the recruiting process. It was like, you know, I hit my sophomore year of high school and he sat me down and was like, listen, you're talented and you're tall, you're going to be recruited. And then he was great in guiding me and figuring out where I wanted to go with my career, and even realizing that I could play in college and that kind of stuff. I chose Pepperdine because I went to a really small Christian high school and I wanted that in my college experience, but I also wanted a high level D1 program, and Pepperdine was kind of the best of both worlds, and it was a perfect fit, and it was like in Malibu, California, you can't really beat it. So that's what brought me to Pepperdine. And I spent 5 years there, 4 years playing indoor and then 2 seasons of beach. And that's kind of what happened. And it's been really fun. Yeah.
So tell me about at what point did you realize or recognize that you wanted to play beach or have the talent to play beach? Because again, back then beach was just starting to evolve, but um, had you played beach growing up, or was that something because Pepperdine had it, you decided, well, I'll give it a chance?
Yeah, I hadn't played growing up at all, and Oregon like didn't exist. My first taste of it was coming to Pepperdine, and in our spring workouts, we would sometimes do a little bit of beach. We'd maybe once a year play a tournament, and then my senior year, they announced they were going to do an ABCA championship, and I didn't want to play. I was looking forward to my senior spring semester of like freedom, no volleyball. I'm a normal student, and then our coach, Nina Matthews, was like, you guys are playing in that to all of us seniors. And I was like, no, we're not. And she goes, yeah, you are. And I was a little bit pissed at first, but then loved it. Like we really got into it. I loved it. I ended up staying a 5th year to just play beach because I loved it so much, and it was a great opportunity. And yeah, discovered that I was pretty decent at it. So that was really unexpected and really fun.
So that was, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you won a national championship in beach. Is that right? Did you win
Yeah.
the one? Was that expected for this team, or was there something that happened with this team that got it to come together to play at a higher level than anyone would have anticipated?
Yeah, I think beach was such a new novel thing that Pepperdine really put in the resources to make it good. I think a lot of schools were like, yeah, let's test it out. Like we have some talent, like, well, whatever. And we were like, no, like we could be good at this. We have the resources. We have a fantastic beach in our backyard, Zuma Beach, with like, that's great training sand opportunity. And we committed to it. And it made it really fun. And we had like Nina Matthews, my coach there, was a legend on the sand, like for years and years. She was incredible. We had Marcio Sicoli, who ended up coaching Carrie and Misty in the Olympics. So like we had all the tools, and it was kind of like, shoot, let's take advantage of it. So
Wow. So even had you not won it all or even necessarily played, when looking back, curious about the role that beach plays in helping a person in the indoor world. Are there some things that you have to do in beach, or that skills that you learn in beach that on occasion translate to the indoor world for you?
totally. I mean, you have to learn every skill. You know, every player is doing every skill all the time, you know, like you're serving, you're passing, everyone's passing and setting, and like ball control is huge. And especially for me, I was a middle my whole time growing up, a middle blocker until my junior year. I switched to opposite just because we had an injury and we needed someone to fill it, but I was still a pseudo middle opposite kind of a position. So me spending time on the beach, I really got to develop other skills and ball control that I hadn't quite as much in my previous years or whatever. And that helped me immensely, because then directly after beach, I went to the national team and switched to an outside where it's a lot more ball control position. So that helped me, I think, a ton in developing a whole kind of game, I guess.
Yeah, because every once in a while, especially a few years ago, Coach Cook would say to me, when they had made a play maybe in the fall, he'd say, that play happened because of our beach season. Because they didn't really play a serious, I wouldn't say, I mean, they didn't dedicate a lot of time to beach in that way. There was more of a way to train in the spring, but he'd say that play wouldn't have happened if we hadn't trained that in beach. So I always was kind of curious with someone who actually played it, you know, what that looks like. And so So at what point did you realize that you were, I mean, like good enough in the indoor world now again to um, actually be considered for the national team? I mean, there's a lot of D1 colleges, lots of great players, and obviously, you know more than I, only a handful can make it to that next level. And so, at what point along the way did you get discovered, or did you recognize that, hey, I'm pretty good at this, and I want to try to go on and play at the highest level?
Um, I didn't ever realize it. It was, so I was my 5th year at Pepperdine playing beach. It was the spring. Um, my best friend, Leila Frederick, was my teammate, my beach partner. Her mom called us like on like a Monday and was like, girls, the national team tryout is happening in Colorado Springs this week, like on Thursday. It was like 3 days away or something. And she goes, you guys should go. It'll be so fun. And we're like, Linda, you have to register for this like months in advance, blah, blah, blah. Why would we go? Like it's generally, the tryout is generally for college girls to play on the A2 team. And we were no longer in that age bracket. I was 23 versus, you had to be under 22. And she was like, no, I know someone, I can get you guys in. Don't worry, blah, blah, blah. It was this crazy stressful day or two of like, okay, like, are we going to go? Like, should we book flights? And just for the experience, we're like, let's go. It'll be fun. Why not? So anyway, we went to the tryout. I tried out as an opposite. Like I had no inclination to go to the outside, and we were just playing and we were laughing because neither of us had played indoor in like a year and a half or something, or like a year. And so we were like, got to readjust. Like my friend Leila like did a beach move and like put a ball over on 2, like with her platform. It was a total, and the girl just like crushed it in her face. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're not on the beach anymore. Anyway, it was this hilarious thing. And yeah, 3 days of a tryout. First 2 I was playing as an opposite. The 3rd day, they moved me to outside to see what it looked like. And then I got a call back from Karch from that tryout. And I love telling people at that tryout, I went to it's in Colorado Springs, the training center. And I went to the gift shop and like bought a USA sweatshirt because I was like, this is so cool, like USA gear, like I'm never gonna have this again. And then I still had the sweatshirt because it was the special thing, and never expected it to go beyond that weekend at all. And ended up getting an email from Karch inviting me on an extended tryout for that summer. And that's kind of what happened. And it was shocking and exciting. And like also wanted to keep that email from Karch, like, oh my gosh, he talked to me, very cool. And that's where it led. I had no expectations, no idea that I would even be capable of having a professional career like that.
So 2 things on that. What did Karch tell you that he saw in you that said he wanted an extended tryout? What did he observe that you really didn't know about yourself?
I'm not totally sure specifically. I think he saw some potential. I mean, I think I fit into their system perfectly, where I'm a tall player, which is great, and I'm relatively not quick, but like I got a quick arm for how tall I am and a decent amount of ball control that he felt like they could develop. So I don't think he necessarily saw that I was like going to be some great player, but he was like, maybe there's something to like cultivate there and nurture there and see. And I think at that point, I came in the perfect point in the quad where it was like, they just had finished the London Olympics. Karch was the new head coach. They were bringing in a lot of talent, a lot of girls to really that summer. I think there were like 80 girls in and out of the gym. Like they were just trying to see what was out there. And I kind of snuck in there and made it work.
Do you think that the lack of expectations going into that tryout helped you from a pressure standpoint?
100%. I was just there like to have fun and to not I didn't expect anything, like you said, and I think that's kind of been honestly my career in a nutshell. It's like, don't expect anything, go out, have high hopes and like believe you can do it, but like if it doesn't happen, whatever, it's just been a relaxed kind of thing. And that tryout set the tone for sure.
Yeah, I love that because that's just the sense I got. You're out there laughing, joking, buying t-shirts. It's a great experience. I mean, you went there to just check it out, and life happens sometimes, right? But it happens sometimes more and better at your best when you take away some of the pressure or whatever creates fear or anxiety in you and just let it flow, right? And sometimes it's harder to do that when all the expectations are on you. So I wonder how that may have played out as you started to play on the national team. All right, so we get to the national team, we get the tryouts. along the way, they've decided you're one of the national team members. Did you immediately make the final team, or were you on? I know they have a couple, I don't know, secondary teams or whatever. Have teams that play in some of the other tournaments, because I know eventually only 12 go, but it starts at 30, 23, 18, 12. But did you make the first round there from the get go, or what was your experience like in transition?
Yeah, I think that summer there were a few like a Pan American tournament and like some other tournament or two. So it was like tournament by tournament, they were like you made the roster and for each tournament. And I remember making my first roster for a Pan Am tournament, like Peru or something, and being totally stoked. And there was a mixture of older girls and newer girls kind of in there. And then it was kind of like a step-by-step thing. It was like, I made this roster, which like was awesome, but it didn't mean a ton for like being like a part of the core group, you know. It was a mixture. And then the next one came and I made that one. The next one kind of came and I made that one. And it was kind of like that. And then it kind of whittled down to this more narrow team that I was suddenly like, oh my gosh, I'm actually on the team. So
What was the hardest thing about the transition to I would call it the national level or the professional level? I know there's different challenges in each of those worlds, but just that next level talent, what was the biggest challenge for you in transition?
wow, that's a good question. I think it's just such a higher level overall. You know, it's like every team you play against has girls that are as tall as me and more talented and with way more experience. You know, that's the difference. I've been playing against girls my age, like 19, 20-year-olds, whatever, for these years. And, you know, there's like kind of a level playing field. And then suddenly I'm going in as a 23-year-old and playing against a 35-year-old who has way more experience than me and way more smarts as far as the volleyball game goes. So that was interesting, and like seeing solutions in the game that I had never seen before, and different ways people played that I had never seen before. And that was an adjustment, but also like really exciting to see the game expand before me and to see how big the game was outside of the little NCAA bubble that I had been in, you know. So that was a challenge, but also really exciting, I think.
When you were in college, was there a mental or mindset component to your training at all that was actually formal, or was that not part of things at that point?
Not really. We had a team psych, I think, at Pepperdine that was available if you needed it, but it wasn't like a formal part of our training for sure.
So when you got to the national team, um, I'm colleagues with Mike Gervais, so we've talked several times, and I had him do one of his first podcasts with Coach Osborne from Nebraska. I was in the room. I got him set up to do it when he first started Finding Mastery. But so I know him, you know, decently, and I consider him one of the best. But I know he was involved with the national team for some time. Was he there right from the time you got there? And did he play a role in formal mental and mindset training for you and your team, or was that something that was just available to individuals?
No, it was definitely a formal thing for all of us. And did he come in 2013 or 2014? It must have been 2013. But we had weekly sit downs with him. Every Friday morning, we started meetings with him, and also available for individual stuff. So that was a whole new element for me, and like a whole new world of like sports psych and that kind of stuff that I hadn't really experienced, but was very exciting because I knew his credentials and I knew who he had worked with and knew that he was a big deal, and like that this was good stuff, and the stuff he was saying was like revolutionary, you know, to someone who had never talked about mindset or that kind of stuff, like sports psych stuff. And it was really cool. I mean, I think all of us, even the older girls on the team and the younger ones all coming in, we learned a lot, especially those first couple of years. It was really exciting and really fun to like start the quad off with that foundation and lay that foundation to build each year, and to start it off in a way that how we wanted it to look, you know.
Yeah.
That was cool.
So I'm going to show you a couple videos a little bit. I want to show you and have you talked about. There was a video that was done right around the time after you won the 2014 World Championships. I want you to tell me about that experience, but it was called The Coolest Culture. And in there, the main theme was that this quad, your team was going to spend more time building relationships, more time being vulnerable with each other. And building that connection, that's what I call the non-technical skills of volleyball or of your sport or your craft. And so what do you remember about that? And what's your take on the role of committing to building deeper relationships and getting vulnerable with each other in terms of how it translates to on-court performance?
Um, I am such a believer in it. I am 100% convinced that's the reason we had success in that first quad through 2016, even though it didn't end totally how we wanted to. And I'm convinced it's the reason we won the gold medal, this year. I think vulnerability is the most powerful thing in the world, and especially in elite athletes, in team sports, when there's so much on the line, there are so many emotions involved, so many factors, that are going through your mind and in the gym, your team, and to have like that stability where you've been vulnerable with each other, you laid a foundation where there's a safety there, a safety net always there with your teammates, that just, I don't know, it just calms everything and makes the sport simple. And it just, I think it's incredible. And like to see it on the court is amazing, and then to see it bleed into your everyday life, I think is even more powerful. I could talk about it all day. I think it's the coolest thing ever.
So could I. Well, I'll just have a whole podcast on that. But I love how you translated into that it helps a team be calm and with composure. That's one of my elite mindset ingredients, is being able to stay calm under stress. And when you have that connection, we're able to do that better than the rest, or the team maybe across from us. And that, you said, it kind of simplifies things for you, right? When you're, and to have that bleed into the rest of your life, which is, my mission is about to help people in life and sport. I always tell teams it's life before sport, that I probably wouldn't be working with you if it was just for your sport, that we're here because of sport. That's why I'm with your coach and you, but that if that's all we were doing, I probably wouldn't be working with your team, not because you're not a good team. It's just that my mission is the same, which is, I believe it bleeds more into life, and, sport ends for everybody eventually, and life, hopefully lasts a lot longer. So I love that and I'm going to skip even asking your emotions on the 14 World Championship, because I think those are easy to know. But, I'm curious of your perspective. I've heard this perspective from as your teammates, but what you hinted at, it didn't end well the first quad, right? I know there was an injury on the team. In short, your team lost in the semifinals, or in the match leading up to the gold medal match. So you ended up having to play for a bronze medal. And I know that was extremely disappointing and disheartening. Could you take me through your emotions of what that was like to fall short before we talk about having to rebound and play in the bronze medal match?
Oh my gosh. That was like maybe the hardest 48 hours of my life, or at least my sports life, for sure. I mean, wow, to go back in that place. I can still so vividly put myself back into the hotel room, coming back directly from the semifinal match, and like being so devastated because we believed so hard. I believed without a doubt that we were winning a gold medal, without a doubt. And to lose that match, to be so devastated, I couldn't even fathom playing another game, And I think one of the things that helped us was Carrie Walsh wrote a letter to Karch. He read it aloud to us because they were in the same situation. They had lost their semifinal match and they had to play for a bronze medal, which for Carrie is a disappointment. It's straight up a disappointment. It was for us too. And she wrote a letter basically saying, like, I know how you feel right now. Like, it's the worst. I know you're devastated. This next match is going to be the grittiest, toughest match you will ever play in your life, 100%. And to hear her talk about it like that, and to reframe your mind, and also you had to reframe it to know that no one else would understand it. Like everyone else, like, it's a disappointment, you gotta just buck it up and play for a bronze medal match. No one would know, except for our team, the grittiness it took to pick ourselves up, to go to practice the next day and to go to the game the next day with like a new mindset. It was one of the most difficult things we ever did, but And as much as getting a bronze medal is disappointing because not what we wanted, there's this level of pride in that bronze medal that other people I think won't really know. And now every time I watch a bronze medal match, I'm like, you guys, I know what you're going through. Like, that is tough and gritty. And it's I don't know, it's a testament to, I think, a lot of athletes when you do win that gold medal match, that bronze medal match, how much it took from you, for sure.
Yeah. When I asked Jordan that question prior to winning the gold medal here recently, she said that was the match in her entire life that she was the most proud of, and that was the best win of her life, was to win that bronze medal because of what you just said. Is that a similar take for you, or is it different?
Definitely similar. And yeah, it's a weird thing because no one will know why it was such a proud moment for us. And I agree, it's one of the proudest moments in my career. It was one of the grittiest and toughest wins. And yeah, standing on that podium, I think, as disappointing as it felt like it was in a lot of ways, you see the smiles on our faces and how much we knew we had overcome. So I like that she said that too.
How much of that loss and that feeling you had of fighting together, how much of that did that set the tone for the next quad? I know the quad got delayed, obviously, by a year. So it was actually a 5-year quad before you got to play the Olympics. Did that have an impact on what was about to happen?
Totally. 100%. I mean, like, nothing breeds motivation like disappointment, right? You know, especially an elite athlete. And especially feeling like the quad leading up to 2016, like feeling like we had done it the right way, you know, like the leaders in that quad and coaches, they took risks to do it the right way and to do it wholeheartedly and to do it with the group of athletes that he felt like could get us there as leaders, which was not always a popular opinion, you know, for the outside public. And to feel like you did it all the right way and still fall short is devastating. And but it also like was motivation that like we're on the right path. Like we know we're on the right path. We're gonna stay the course and try again. Let's figure out a new way or to continue the old way and add things to it to do it the right way, for sure.
Before we transition into the next quad, just for everyone to understand your role in those years, I mean, what was your role on the team in terms of how much did you play? What position did you end up playing in those years of 14 to 16 when it involved the World Championship and then the bronze medal? What was your role then?
I was mostly a starter, not always, but most of the time a starter. And I think I was still a young gun and just like a little bit of a ball of energy and like joy and fun. And for me, it was like a lot of the older girls, let them do the leading, and I'm here to just like work hard, have fun, and like do what I can for my team, kind of a thing. And I think it was really fun and like a lot less pressure in a lot of ways, but I think it changed going into the next quad, probably. Yeah.
Right. And so at the same time, though, you're also playing professionally, right?
Yeah.
How different of an experience was that for you? I mean, you have this time period on the national team, you have months of playing professional ball, often around the world, obviously, and not in America. So what was the professional experience like for you, for those that are interested in that general experience, if they're considering playing at the next level? What are the, I guess, you know, the benefits and the costs of playing international professional volleyball?
Yeah, it's definitely gotta analyze the cost benefit kind of thing because it's tough. It depends if you're on the national team. We're on the national team, so we're doing that from May to September and then October through April-ish. You're living overseas. And I had some great experience playing overseas, mostly great experiences, some really tough experiences, especially my first couple seasons were really tough. But I would recommend anyone who has the opportunity to do it. It's like you'll grow more as a person than you ever thought possible. Like it's the most incredible experience to be able to travel, not just travel, but like to live among a different culture and people with different beliefs, different mindsets, different everything. Yeah, it was really hard for me in a lot of ways. My first couple seasons, like international volleyball and like how they do volleyball in other countries is very different than how we do in America in a lot of ways. And that was a difficult adjustment, but I also played on teams that were really great and I had the best experience ever. So I don't know, I loved playing overseas.
So give me one example for people, because I'm a big growth through adversity person, meaning we grow our most in adverse situations. So give us an example of what you, because people are going to want to know, like, all right, what did she mean by a tough experience? So what was a tough experience, but then how did you grow from it?
My toughest was probably my first season overseas. I played in Poland. And of course, your first year overseas, I would tell anyone it's the toughest. It's a huge adjustment. If I were to go back to that season now, I would handle it completely differently and blah, blah, blah. But I had a coach who basically just taught things completely different than how I had been taught. And I completely disagreed with how he was teaching things. And I thought it was quite frankly stupid I didn't tell him this, and what was frustrating was that he tried to say he was open to feedback from me and would like, let's sit down and talk about it. And then I would explain how I thought about it and why I had done it the way I had. And he would just every time be like, no, this is why you're wrong. This is why you're wrong. This is not how it is. And it was so frustrating. I mean, like I would cry after practice often. It was really hard, but what came from that was returning to the national team gym that summer and being so excited to be there and to be learning stuff that I believed in and knew was right. So I felt like I was just drinking in everything. That summer of 2014 that reflected in us winning world championships was like, I just wanted to improve because I had this great coaching that I knew I could improve with. And it was really an incredible summer for that reason. I don't know if it would have been, I don't know if I would have grown that much that summer if it hadn't been for that tough season, I think.
Yeah, I love that. So I want to ask you a question about Karch in that lens back then, because I want to ask you also how he may have evolved even, but what did he do so well in that quad that you're talking about between 13 to 16 that puts your team in a position to, max out, to win it all, right? And then to battle back. But what did he do so well, especially since you had some references to comparisons to some other coaches? What stands out to you from that quad? And when you think of that answer, keep in mind maybe something that he's even done better or different this last time around.
Yeah, I think that quad, and I would include all the assistants in that, they were all great at this. We were so intent on learning, which that's a cornerstone of USA Volleyball, I think. But we were, especially because Karch was building, he was the new head coach and he was building how he wanted the team to look. He was very invested in not just volleyball skills wise. We were so honed in on our, watching video and being intent on goals every day and making sure we were improving on those goals every day. That was really incredible. And it was a new thing for me, a new experience to be that laser focused. And then that combined with the mental aspect of the game, the teammateship aspect of the game, and the work we did with Mike Gervais, it just felt like a wholehearted approach to the game, where it was like, we're not just here to like get you better at passing, but like we're here to like fully form you as a human. And I think that foundation was huge for the next 8 years and beyond, and for all of us in life, of course. But those 4 years especially, I think it really like solidified what the program should look like going forward. And I think this most recent quad just built upon that foundation. I think that was critical in those 4 years to start it off like that, for sure.
Wow, I love how you describe that, because you talked about the foundation. I talk about the foundation of being when I use the word, one of my elite mindset ingredients called commitment, meaning all in on the 4 legs of the performance tool: the physical leg, the mental leg, the technical leg, and the tactical leg. And you kind of hinted on all those. It wasn't just skills, physical or technical. It wasn't just the mental, which you added. You had this great physical program of growth and learning, but also through film work and through study and through goal setting every day. And so you covered everything: physical, mental, technical, tactical. And I always say that in order, even at the elite level, there's different levels of commitment because a lot of it comes down to the coach or the individual athlete. But what you really crushed was this next level commitment where you had all four legs of the stool covered. And I call that the foundation for my next ingredient of what I call confidence. So I'm curious, for you, was confidence something you ever struggled with?
In moments, yes. I think like any athlete, there are moments where it's really tough. But I don't think it was a huge factor. I think I've overall been confident enough and like had enough of a base where it came kind of naturally to me in a way to a certain level. Not that I'm like some incredibly confident person that never had doubt, but like it wasn't something I struggled a ton with. I don't know, I think I've been clear with my role and like having, this sounds so bad, but not low expectations, but like no expectations, where I was just happy to be there and like doing whatever I could for the team. So confidence just kind of, I don't know, it was just enough there, I guess. I don't know.
Well, my second ingredient of confidence is self-talk. And I already get the sense, because you had set yourself up for reasonable expectations, or even maybe lower, but still believed, I mean, you're still fighting for everything, was that you didn't get so down on yourself all the time. Then if something didn't go your way or you got disappointed, rather than making it about your self-worth and going, well, I'm not starting here or doing this, I'm a bad person, I have no worth, or I'm not very good at volleyball. So because when people think about where does confidence come from, it comes from preparation, which I think you've described. You kind of killed that, but so do a lot of elite athletes, right? And then where's the rest come from? I call the second and third ingredients of confidence my hidden ingredients. One is self-talk, and then the next one is what our teammates and coaches say or do for us in that moment of stress can help or hurt our confidence. And that's one of the things I want to ask you about then, which was your self-talk pretty good most of the time? And if it wasn't, did you have a strategy?
Mostly pretty good. I've always been pretty good at moving on to the next play and not dwelling on what happened before. I'm pretty good at like, all right, next thing, shake it off. And I think a lot of that is attributed to me enjoying the game and being very much in the moment. And I think I'm good at that in my life in general, and that translated to the game of like being very present in the current moment, wherever I'm at, whichever group of friends I'm hanging out with, I'm there. And whenever I'm on the court, whichever point we're on, I'm in that point and I'm not on the last one. And I think I've done that well because I've focused on just enjoying the game. And when you're thinking about having fun in the game, like thinking about the last ball is like not fun, it's like, I don't know, I always have these aha moments of like, I shanked a pass and then I'm on the next one and I'm looking at the stadium and thinking, this is freaking cool, look where I'm at. And that just like has refocused me all the time, which I don't know, I think it's been a cool skill for me, I guess.
Yeah, so you have refocused strategies. And then what you really said is, which one of my favorite things I've heard in a while, is just the way you describe mindfulness to me, which is when I'm with my friends, I'm present, I'm there. Mm-hmm. And when I'm on volleyball, I'm there. And when I move on to the next point, I'm there. And I do a great job. I always tell teams and athletes what the best do better than the rest is get on to the next moment, the next play. And when their mind gets distracted to the past or the future, have an awareness that my job is to get back to the present moment. I'm right here, right now. And it sounds like you've done that. Maybe we're partly wired that way. You learned it. You developed a joy and love for the game, which helped you sort of refocus. Sometimes I just look at the crowd and that refocuses you. So you had your strategies, even though they might have been not necessarily planned. It's just kind of how you evolved, right? Or whatever, shake it off, next play. And that's actually a form of self-talk, right? Shake it off, next play, versus what's wrong with me? Here we go again. I'm letting my team down. I can never make that pass. And because I'm always amazed by what the elite athletes say to themselves internally. It's shocking at times. But shake it off, next play is a pretty good form of positive self-talk to me. It doesn't have to be I'm the greatest, I'm the hardest worker. It could be just telling ourselves to move on.
Yeah, and I think, can I mention something else too? And I think that comes from, and you kind of touched on this, like a strong sense of self. and like I'm very much able to separate me as a person and my playing performance. And so I think when people spiral with those kind of things, it's because they're wrapping up their sense of worth in their performance and like missing this player, missing that. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm terrible. I'm letting everyone down, blah, blah, blah. But when you can have a strong sense of self and be like, I know who I am. I know this, I have value in this. And these other little mistakes become smaller and like less significant. And I think you're able to move on better from that. I think that's helped me a lot over the years.
I hope my audience just listened to the last 10 seconds or 20. That was a gem, right? Which is how many people get their their self-worth tied to their performance. And did that ever happen with you? Was it ever tied at one point and you had to work through it, or were you just one of those that it didn't occur that way?
Mostly didn't happen. I was overall pretty good at separating the two. I had a period just this last year, my season overseas, where I wasn't playing well. And I knew it this past year of my career, I wasn't playing well. And I was on a team overseas who I loved. I had played for 4 years. I felt like it was my home and I wanted us to do well. And I really struggled with not being able to deliver that for them. And I think it made it harder because of COVID and not having an outside life to balance me and to reaffirm that sense of self outside of the game. So I was in practice all the time. And I wasn't in practice. It was like I was at my apartment, but like still with my teammates in the same bubble. And like it was hard to reaffirm that sense of self. And I found myself getting in a tunnel of like, I'm not able to contribute to my team. Life is hard right now. Whereas before, when I wasn't playing well, it was like, it's hard on the court, but outside of the court, I'm fine. And like, I'm able to brush it off. So I think that's when it got all a little convoluted and a little bit like shadowy and dark. But it was kind of a cool lesson for me to like see how it could be like that, you know?
Yeah, it's just reality, right? This last couple of years for most people have been a challenge, and different challenges, different circumstances, but it's been the most level of psychological distress I've ever seen in my years. I'm getting up there. So, but I mean, I've seen a lot, but I've never seen so much from the high school all the way to people in their 80s, the amount of distress for whatever reason. And part of it is what you described, which is one of the things that has kept you sane is balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we lose balance and structure during COVID, different levels for different people, depending on what they're doing, but it's really hard to maintain some of our strengths sometimes under stress. And so that's a great lesson, right? Because even though you crush it most of the time, you can see how it can get off if set of circumstances occur in life. So, all right, so let's jump forward. We're in a new quad. Let's skip the COVID stuff. I mean, it is what it is. You kind of already hinted at it. I mean, and it's real, and it was a big part of this journey of your team trying to form. And then there was a delay. Was there a moment in time for you when you found out the Olympics were canceled that you had a decision to make, like a lot of people? Do I stick around for one more year and play in the Olympics next year if they happen, or do I pack it in? Did you have a decision in that regard, or was it an obvious one for you that you knew what you were going to do?
It was pretty obvious for me. I had planned to be done after the Olympics, so it being postponed and like not just having to play another, that sounds bad, having to play another season with the national team, but that means playing a whole nother year overseas too. So it was a whole thing, and I knew I was going to do it, but it was hard to accept in some ways for sure. But it ended up fine. But yeah, for me, it was like, I've come this far, like we're sticking with it for sure.
Yeah. So before I show you this video of the national team that you're in, because I want you to comment on it, which is what I consider one of my favorite videos I've ever seen. It took place somewhere in the month or two before the Olympics. Had your role changed with the team at all? Like you described your role in that last quad, and had your role changed for you during the quad? And did it change even further as it headed to the Olympics, or did you kind of know your role in that moment?
It definitely changed. I mean, like through this last quad, there were in my just playing wise time, like there were 4 of us who were rotating consistently, and like sometimes I was a starter and sometimes I wasn't, and that was definitely an adjustment in a lot of ways. And then of course going even closer to the Olympics, I was not even a starter. I was completely different role as a serving sub, but also just like leadership wise, coming into this new quad and being one of the older girls now with a whole slew of new girls coming in, younger girls, was an interesting adjustment. And you know, I ended up being on the leadership council with like Jordan and some older girls, and that was an adjustment for me for sure. And I think I hadn't really thought about my role changing in that way. And then once it came to me like that, I was like, oh, this is what I need to be doing. And it was kind of a weird thing that I almost didn't push back against a little bit, but hesitated a little bit. And then once I realized that's what I needed, what my team needed, it became more of a natural kind of role. But it was very different for sure from my first quad to my next quad.
I think this is a perfect time to show you that video. It's a few minutes. So I just want you to watch it through your lens. It has probably 5 or 6 of your teammates on there who, you know, at the time it was done, compared to their roles on the team as it progressed, is just bizarre watching it. Just the number of changes that have occurred just from the time they did it to what actually happened during the Olympics. And then there's some messages from Karch in there too that I think are really cool. So I just want you to watch it. Obviously, I want to hear what your thoughts are about a couple of the things that you said in this video as well.
Good morning, USA. It's going to be an awesome training day.
There are a lot of sacrifices that come with being an athlete.
I've missed birthdays, weddings, births, deaths. You know, it's not easy.
I've had many moments where I thought maybe it was too much. Not quite to where I don't want to do it anymore, but to the point where like, I can't keep going this way.
The players, almost all of them, lead double lives. They spend a lot of time overseas playing for their professional club teams, 5 or 6, 6 or 7 months with the USA team. So 2 seasons every year with very little time between. Any other sport would consider that crazy. It's basically year-round volleyball. And so we have to be extra careful about giving them some downtime and then slowly ramping them up. In lots of ways, it's really challenging to be an elite female volleyball player. And that's one of the many reasons why I'm so impressed with this really special group of human beings who happen to be great women, great people, and great volleyball players. Here we go. USA. That's it,
I have been playing professionally now for 8 years, and this will be my hopefully 2nd time going to the Olympics. You just have to like be disciplined, and you have to be willing to like give everything you have. And I think in turn that just, it narrows the field to these people that just like soak up life and makes it a very great environment.
Sometimes it's hard feeling this like imposter syndrome that like, oh, is this just an accident that I'm here? Just have confidence. You've earned it. You've put in work behind the scenes that people don't see. You've pushed through a lot mentally and physically, and you deserve this opportunity. I still tell myself that every day, like to try and help myself believe it.
Yeah, basically my whole career has been either skipping positions or skipping from beach to indoor. And so I think it's helped me in that I've had to stay open to feedback, open to trying new things, and not having crazy expectations and just kind of going with the flow one day at a time.
With the pandemic, this is the first time we're seeing some people in like a year and a half almost. You're kind of in a room with a lot of your enemies in a way, these girls you've played against all through college, and it's been pretty intense matchups.
All 23 are like so team first, it's incredible. And it's like a tricky balance, trying to make rosters and competing against your teammate, your friends, and then also wanting them to do well because you want the team to do well. So it's like, it's weird. It's a weird job.
Yeah. Practicing with each other, I think we're just more connected.
It's not like we need everyone to be the same level of competitive or the same level of talkative or the same level of caring or humble or whatever, insert whatever. But we need everyone to recognize what their strengths are and how can I contribute those into like the group effort.
We don't have a player on our team, nor are we aspiring to have one that just is the whole team. Nice run! Our best chance for success is really to out-team
Everybody else.
This program has had a lot of success, but never stood at the top of the podium. We are hurling ourselves at that door and looking to break it down. That's a dream of mine for this program.
As a team, we really set ourselves up for success.
We're trying to make history, do something we've never done.
We are one of the best teams in the world.
Frick, let it rip. Let's frickin' do it. That's exciting to think about.
What do you think? What are your thoughts watching that now in reflection to what you already know has happened? Obviously, you're a big part of that story. And what are your thoughts?
It's weird going back. I mean, I guess I haven't really thought so much about going back into that place in time and like thinking about specific training leading up to the Olympics. I hadn't really thought about that, you know, since it's happened, since we've won. It's fun to see. It's fun to see like one, the uncertainty in a lot of ways and the emotions and how confident we were in what we were doing. I think it's, wow, the video is really cool. I forgot about it. So it's really cool.
Well, I asked teams, you know, what they've learned, but I also asked, what did you hear in there that was a technical volleyball skill that was important to this team? What were the non-technical ones? And of course, there wasn't a single mention of anything about blocking, digging, hitting. It was always about different pieces. But the things, if I was to tell you the things that stand out to most of people, it's one of the things that you said, talking about it's all 23 of us and we're connected, and you know, you're fighting against your friends and your teammates for a spot, and yet you want them to do well so the team does well, and you call it a weird job. And I'm telling you that more teams have emotions over that discussion, because it's not often talked about, that it's hard to be on a team with friends and teammates where you're fighting for spots, and then if you don't have the spot, you still kind of want them to do well, but if you want to get on the court, they kind of maybe don't have to do well. And like you said, the way you described it, it's a weird job, I think has resonated with the high school kids all the way up to when it really is a job. What do you think? I mean, when you said that, I mean, where was that coming from for you?
Yeah, exactly that, of like, I think especially only the last year or so of my career, I kind of learned to accept the weirdness and of the job in that, and being okay with those emotions. Like, I think for years I was feeling guilt at like what you said, like I'm not playing and this girl's playing and I want her to do well, but like there's a part of me that doesn't want her to do well because I want to go in. And like I think it's okay. And I felt so much guilt about it, and like she's my friend and I want her to do well, like I'm a terrible person for like wanting this for myself. But that's why we are elite athletes, and that's why we are where we are, just because we want to be on the court. We want to be the guy in the center of the arena, you know, like we want that, and our competitiveness wants that. And I think once you accept it and note that it's okay to, the two thoughts can exist in the same world. And I think that's hard for us to accept. And once you do accept that, it's like almost freeing, where it's like, obviously my priority is that the team does well. And my priority is that she does well and that we win the game, and whoever can get that done gets that done. And I know that that's my priority. So to have these other thoughts that like, I still want to be in there and I still maybe want her to do bad sometimes, so I can do well, I think that's okay. And like, as long as we accept that it's okay and we know what our priorities are, then we can have those two thoughts. They can both exist in our world. But it's a weird thing, and it's hard, I think, especially for women, when we're like so closely tied and have such close friendships, to like be able to be okay with that. So I don't know, it's a weird thing, but I think you can find peace in it in some way.
How much of that did that allow your team to out team the other team, that connectedness and that acceptance that it's okay to have both feelings and it's okay to have a different role, because a lot of people on this team had roles that were different than what they had before or what they thought their role would be, from my observation or understanding of it. What's your observation?
100%. I don't think any other team could have handled it like our team. And I think that was the reason we were successful. And I think the reason we were able to do that was like going back to the foundation we put down. And it's not like you can't just jump on a team and immediately day one be like, we're all going to be okay with each other, like this person going ahead of you, and we're all going to be a connected group. Like, it's months of work. It's months of working on our team culture and bonding and vulnerability and creating that trust to where we've grown into this solid unit where emotions can change, roles can change, and we are so laser focused and solidified in our goal that those things will fall away and will not affect our overall goal. And I think that's a testament to the 1.5 years or more work we did, 8 years of work. And that's the only way I think it can be successful in that way, is from all that work and that foundation.
So we talked about Mike Gervais before. My understanding is that you had a very unique coach this time, who was actually a softball coach, retired, who played the role. I mean, without maybe the psychology credentials, but she certainly had the credentials necessary to do what she did for your team, Sue Enquist. What's put into words what Sue meant to your team?
Oh my gosh, can I even? Sue, I am Sue's #1 fan. I would say maybe Sue is the reason we have a gold medal, to be honest. Not maybe, I've told her that and I believe that she is the reason. Sue, like you said, is not a traditional sports psych, but I think what was incredible about our team, especially immediately after them announcing the Olympics were postponed, was that we identified something that we needed, that we were lacking in, which was some sort of unity or foundation with us girls, especially. And we loved each other and we had part of that, but we felt like it could be taken a step further to edge out our competition, because like we had said, we didn't have a star player who was going to score 40 points and win the match for us. Like, it was very much going to have to be a 12-person contribution, a 23-person contribution to get the gold medal. And we identified that we needed to figure out a way where we could all feel safe to contribute our full selves. And Sue was that person that was able to come in and lay that foundation and do the work that we needed. And like, Sue was hilarious. And it was honestly at a lot of times a very like Karate Kid wax on, wax off situation where we were working for a year and a half, doing Zoom meetings while we were overseas. And I will be honest, I was very unsure of if what we were doing was gonna work, you know? And each Zoom meeting, I'm like, what are we doing? And Sue kept saying, trust the process. Like, you guys, this is gonna work. This is gonna work. This is gonna work. And we were like, okay, but like, is it? And by the time the Olympics rolled around, it was suddenly this click of like, oh, this is what we've been working for this last year, this feeling, this security in who we are. And it was really incredible, and like nothing I've ever been a part of, for sure.
So what Justine focused on when I talked to her, Justine Wong-Arantes, a lot was the third ingredient of confidence, what I call it, what our teammates and coaches say to us or how they, connect with us can help or hurt our confidence. And I love the way she described it, but she said, you guys spent so much time knowing what everyone needed from each other that she said, I knew I could turn to anyone, any of the 12, and none of them would let me sit in a funk. Like, we never felt isolated. We never felt like we had to do it alone. And the way I translated it from listening to Jordan and Justine is that your team was almost what I would call obsessed with mistake recovery or moving on to the next point. And we're gonna have to out team. We didn't have, like you said, maybe even the most talent in the world, but we had enough. And we were gonna have to move on to the next point better. And part of that was like, does somebody need a handhold? Does someone need eye contact? Does someone need some words? I don't want to be touched. Like, we spent a lot of time behind the scenes working on that, because I'm such a believer in that when we're stressed, our teammate can say or do the right thing if they know what to do, or a coach, and they can also hurt our confidence if they don't say anything or don't make eye contact or give us a dirty look or roll their eyes at us or give us bad information. So what was your take on, Sue's role and then the team coming together and that third ingredient of confidence, meaning how great from your perspective was the team at picking each other up and making us move on to the next point collectively?
I love that Justine talked about that, because that's 100% how it was, 100%. And going back to what I guess been saying this whole podcast is, you're only able to do that kind of work and stuff if you have the foundation of vulnerability and being okay with vulnerability. I mean, it takes a lot for one of the best athletes in the world to look at a player who's 10 years younger and be like, in this moment, I need this. Like, I need this from you. Like, I'm struggling. And I've been on no other team where anyone can say they're struggling at one point and feel okay with it and feel like they're not going to be judged and thought of as being weak, but rather everyone lifts them up and says, that's no longer your problem. Whatever you just said, you said you're nervous before the match and you're shaky. It's no longer your problem, it's our problem, and you don't have to worry about it. And I've seen that in action, where that's literally what a player said before a match. Everyone else said, it's not your problem, we're taking on ourselves. And that player was free like I've never seen before and kicked ass on the court, And I've never seen anything like that on a team before. And it was really powerful. And that only happens when you have that security and that trust, and you're able to say, this is what I need in that moment. This is what, I don't need this, but I need this. And you feel safe and comfortable saying that. And I just think it's the best thing ever. And I love talking about it. It's crazy.
Cool, isn't it? Justine used the same words. I never was more free. That's exactly how she described it than she was at VNL and at the Olympics. And in her case, she didn't even know she was going to go to the Olympics because they were only taking one libero. And she said, I'll be the second one, those things change obviously. But she said, I never was more free. And it was because of my teammates, which is really cool because a lot of teams don't believe me necessarily about that, or they do, but same thing, like you're sitting there with Sue going, is this going to work? What are we doing here? And so many times I'm telling teams, look, trust this process. This is where we're going to get our edge. It's listen to what the best say. You've not once told me how great of a hitter you were, how great of a blocker you were, how great of a digger you were, how great of a passer you were individually or your team. And yet there was one team holding the gold. So before I show you the second video, because then I want to get to the end part of that. One other part in that video we just watched, I'm just curious about your comments because it's probably the other most powerful thing that ladies observed when watching this video was Jordan Thompson's talking about imposter syndrome and wondering if she belonged. One, when you watch that, did that resonate at all with you as an individual, or what was just your observations of her and her emotions when she said that?
I mean, first, it's like heartbreaking to see your teammate who I know she deserves to be there. We all know she deserves to be there, but to see her feel that it's heartbreaking, of course, but it's also a testament to, like, I think every elite athlete has felt that at some point. Maybe there are some people with like super confidence that don't, but like overall, especially I think females, we feel that, and we've all had that moment of imposter syndrome, and it's really too bad, but it's everywhere. And I think that can be encouraging to like younger girls. Whenever I talk to them, I'm like trying to tell them, look at any girl on the Olympic team, the best of the best. You think they have no confidence in shoes and they're 100% secure. Like, everyone has had those thoughts at some point, and it's just how we handle them that is the difference maker, I think. But sweetie Jordan, man, it's heartbreaking to see, for sure.
I love that you said that it can be encouraging, because that's what I observe too, is why I spend so much time showing these videos, is that they have hope that, like, oh wow, the best struggle with this stuff. They even saw, I said, well, what was one of Jordan's strategies? She would tell herself every morning, I worked hard mentally. So they say she used her self-talk in a positive way. And so kind of say like, wow. And at the moment I showed people that video at first, nobody knew who Jordan Thompson was, because she hadn't had those crazy Olympic games yet, because I was starting to show it before the Olympics, and maybe because she was from Cincinnati, I don't know, but people didn't know her. And they're like, I don't even know who she is. Well, pretty soon people got to know her pretty quickly, right? And the games that she had. And yet, even as great as she was, she still needed to reinforce that with self-talk and probably what her teammates said to her to help her stay confident, right? So let me play this next video. Again, we heard Annie Drews in this video. She talked about how not everybody needed to be the same level of humble or kind or talkative. Just play to your strengths. And I would imagine that she thought she would have had a different role too this year on the Olympics. And then Jordan Thompson, the one we just talked about, beat her out. And so I'm going to show you a short video of Annie Drews being interviewed right after, I think, the third or fourth match of the Olympics. I think Jordan Thompson was just a little bit in struggle mode, and Annie came in, and that happens. And then the very next game, Jordan starts again, but gets hurt. And then Annie plays the rest of the year. So it's just kind of bizarre. But I want you to listen to what Annie has to say. There's two parts. One, she talks about how she was able to come into the game after not playing at all. And then two, the reporter asks her a question. As you hinted at earlier, 8 out of the 12 athletes on the team were not on the Olympic team before. You were not one of them. You were one of the repeats. And how they were able to stay so calm and composed.
Much joined by Annie Drews, who is truly the difference maker for Team USA in that 5th and decisive set. And Annie, how do you describe your mentality, sitting on the bench, waiting for your number to be called, coming in and making such a huge impact?
One thing we've really asked of our coaches this year is role clarity and being able to know what our role is, whether it's the role we want or not, is really important. And I know my role right now is to come in and change a game. So just knowing that, like, if my number's called, I have to do something to bring a little spark. I think having that role clarity helps a lot.
8 of you included, 8 of your teammates, you guys are first-time Olympians. So how do you keep your calm and cool and stay so collected when so much is on the line as an Olympic rookie?
We have worked so hard to be like a collective group of 12, and I think that really shows in those big moments. We get a big deep breath, we make eye contact, and we play for each other, nothing else. And I think knowing they have my back and I have theirs, it makes it less about what I need to do and more about what we can do as a group. And
what are your thoughts?
Sweetie Annie. No, I mean, she said it perfectly, I think. I think it's a lesson for coaches how important role clarity is, and it's a testament to Annie and to the other girls who didn't have the spot they wanted. They didn't have the role they wanted. It's freaking hard, but to be able to step into that role and give 100% to that role, even if it's a minor role. I mean, I know what that's like too. It's frustrating and hard, but like acknowledging that your role is important and accepting that your role is still important is critical. And being ready in those big moments like Annie was, I mean, that was huge. It was just huge. So.
And I tell teams that had Jordan not got hurt, maybe that was her contribution to the Olympics, a couple sets. But then when Jordan got hurt, Annie came back in, played great, and never relinquished the spot. And that happens, right? And we never know our journeys, right? I mean, your setter got hurt, Jordan got hurt, and different people had to step in at different times, all in 3 weeks. So your team is filled with so many lessons for all the other teams I work with. And so it's why you're in the forefront, you and a number of your other teammates, every day when I talk to teams, because I want them to see what the best do. Not because we never talk about their physical skills, because if we had to compare those, well, now we got a problem, right? But it's never about those. It's always about everything else you just mentioned, role clarity. What about that second part? How real was that? The talk about taking collective deep breaths, and Jordan's mentioned tight huddles and making eye contact and all that stuff to being a great team.
I think it's totally important. I am so big on eye contact in those moments. Like, there's nothing worse than feeling like you're alone in a big moment. And we've all felt that at some point, and it just feels crappy and it feels overwhelming. But to feel in a big moment like you have 5 other girls that have your back, or 11 other girls that have your back, or however many in your team, it just, like I said before, simplifies everything and calms everything. And like physical actions, physical touch, those kind of things are big in for us as humans, you know, and like to be able to take advantage of those little cues that feel small, touching a hand or hand on the back or eye contact or something, or they're little things, but I think they make a big, big impact for sure.
I'm obsessed with eye contact too, in terms of trust and belief and communication. And so All right, so just take me through your feelings of and emotions. It's been a long 8 years, lots of good stuff, some recent hardships with COVID and everything else. When we get to the gold medal match and just progressing through that and winning it all, what were your emotions?
Oh my gosh. I mean, a ton of emotion. I mean, I can tell you in the locker room before the gold medal match, we were all extremely emotional and feeling very much like, one, we were all repeating like, this match, whatever happens, does not define what we've done at all. And that provided a lot of freedom. And then the second part to that was, but let's go get this thing, you know? And it was really special, a really special moment with us 12. And then, of course, winning it was just incredible, like no words. I still sometimes feel like it did never happen and was not real, especially when I watch the videos from before and like that being the mindset for so many years and then realizing we accomplished it is just wild. But it's been a crazy few months, 6 months, I guess now, and emotional and just so much pride in what we did and feeling forever connected to not just those other 11 women, but like those other 22 women that were training. And it's just so special. I love thinking about it. It's really cool.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's unique, right? You have a group of 30 some and it whittles down at different parts, but it's in a collective team, some which don't even travel with you by the time that happens, but it's all part of your journey that, so before we transition to this last part, tell me about Karch. I mean, obviously I understood that he was dealing with a health condition that he had kind of kept to himself for the most part, but what did Karch do better or how did he evolve that may have contributed to the success of this team as compared to years earlier?
I go back and forth between if I should say this or not, but I think one of the most important things Karch did this quad, especially was the last year and a half of the quad, was relinquishing some control, which is maybe not the best thing to say, but I think it's 100% true. I mean, when we got to the point when the Olympics were postponed and we wanted to bring Sue on, we as a team came together and decided what we felt like we needed. And we presented it to Karch. And I think initially he wasn't sure that he agreed with us and that was a priority for us. He felt like maybe we needed a more traditional sports psych kind of a thing. And we were very much like, no, we know what we need. Like, we are very sure. We've all been around the block a time or two. We know what it looks like. We know what we're lacking. And I think contrary to what he felt like he thought we needed, he let go and said, all right, I trust you guys. I trust that you guys know what you need. You are making this decision yourself, and I'm going to let you have it. And that for sure was not easy. A lot of us wouldn't be able to do that as a head coach. And I think him trusting us in that way was really, really important. And I really have so much respect for him to be able to do that. And I think that made the difference, I think, for our team, really 100%. So I'm proud of Karch for doing that. It's really impressive.
I love that. I think it was perfect. I think if he heard this, he would have pride in that as well, the evolution of a coach, right? And sometimes evolving means relinquishing a little bit of control or not micromanaging enough, or my phrase that I've used forever that we coined back in the day with one of the Nebraska teams was ultimate trust. And that is one more example for my audience to hear what ultimate trust is, which is a group of ladies who've been around Karch for a long time, who are all high-level athletes and people, had the courage to tell Karch they needed something different than they had before, and maybe something different than Karch had in his mind. And then he had the trust to allow the freedom for you to move forward with that, even though it might not have been what he was thinking was needed either. And so it's a two-way street. This next level trust requires relationships, vulnerability, long time together, and the willingness to have uncomfortable conversations. And you've described all those. It's so easy not to do that or to go, all right, Karch, well, you're the boss. We'll just do what you say versus no, we know what we need right now. Trust us. And for him to trust you you trusted him more because he trusted you. It's crazy, isn't it? And it's a cool story that you shared. So I'm glad you shared it. All right, Kim. So let's transition to this next stage now. You've mentioned there's been a separation for winning it all. I want to talk about two pieces, one that won't probably take as long, but I just understand within the last couple days, because you were named the volunteer coach for Long Beach State, where Tyler Hildebrand took over as coach, and I knew him from our days at Nebraska, and knew his wife. And tell me about that first. Was that something you had been anticipating? Did it just come up? That's a big deal.
Yeah, it kind of came up unexpectedly a little bit. I had not necessarily had my eye on coaching. It was not really on my radar. I kind of thought like maybe, but like probably not, kind of. And then really the perfect situation came about. You know, I heard Tyler was coming, excuse me, to be the head coach at Long Beach. Kirsty Jackson, who's a friend of mine, was going to be an assistant. I live in Long Beach. I've been here for a few years and I love it. And I've been very intrigued by what Sue Enquist did and very much wanted to explore that as maybe a career for myself, or like seeing what that looked like. And Tyler called me and like kind of wanted to feel out what I thought about it, maybe doing it. And I was hesitant and kind of like, listen, like, I don't know how much I can commit to you, like time-wise. I don't know if I'm into this coaching thing, like blah, blah, blah. And he was very open and like what excites you about coaching? Which part of it intrigues you? And I kind of told him which parts, the team culture parts. And he was like, let's go with that. Like you can take that over with our team and kind of honing your skills on that kind of thing. So really it's been this perfect situation of like kind of a dream staff with just their mindset when it comes to coaching and like into growth mindset and team culture, and which you don't always see a lot. You don't see teams actually executing it. You see coaches talking about it and being like, yeah, growth mindset or this kind of stuff. But like when it comes to the day-to-day application, they're not really doing it how they should be and how it can make an impact. And I think Tyler is really does that. And the other coaches on staff do it too. And so it's kind of one of those things where like, I want to be a part of this kind of a culture that's they're creating. I don't know what it'll look like in the future, if it's what I want to do long term, but for right now, it's really exciting and really fun to be a part of. So yeah, I'm excited about it.
Well, last time you decided to go do something on a whim, just kind of worked out. You got a sweatshirt out of it and then a career, right? You just don't know, right? My experience has been is that most of the great things happen in life we don't plan. Like a lot of us are planners, perfectionists. We think we've got our whole lives figured out. We're going to do this, this, and this. And then when we really look back at most of our most special times and moments, we didn't plan them. And even though we think we have a lot more control over our lives and planning, we really don't. But if we're open to ideas and thoughts, then that's where the cool things happen. And so I love the fact that you can take on a team culture role. I call Sue's role and my role small but significant. Mm-hmm. Meaning small in the sense that I never like it when teams, like you said with Sue, and I totally agree, obviously, because I do this stuff, but I don't totally agree. That's not true. But we do play a role. And whether she was the X factor or not, right? Like I never want to diminish the roles of when I'm there, of the coaches that are there thousands of hours, and the strength trainers that are there, 40 hours a week, and the athletic trainers there 70 hours a week. And then they tell you that you're the reason why we, reach this goal. And they don't mean it to diminish anyone else, but I like to say, my role is much smaller compared to the people that are there day to day, but it's significant because of what you said. There's a huge mental component and team chemistry and culture component to winning. So I never want to diminish the role, but I also don't want to say like, wow, we're all this, but it's going to be a very powerful role for you. And you've learned from the best, and you've already learned from Sue that you don't need to have all their credentials. You need to learn some things about psychology, but a lot of that you learn from life, right? From living, from being on teams, from accepting your roles, from having heartbreak and failure. And so you learn a lot of the key psych components for teams by living it. So you're going to be a natural at it, and you'll have, people to reach out to. You can always reach out to me, but you have great people you can reach out to for advice or answers. And so that's awesome. So we're going to see where that goes, right? But let's talk about this other thing, right? There was a league last year called Athletes Unlimited. It's coming back. It's a unique kind of professional league that's allowing some people to play in America for the first time, so that you don't have to have all those experiences overseas. You don't want them. I understand that you have another league that you're going to be very active in. They call Love. It's LOVB. Why don't you just, as we finish up today, why don't you share whatever you want to share about it? What's it looking like? How did it come about? What's your role? What are you excited about? And tell me about Love.
Yeah, so it's called League One Volleyball. That's why it's called Love. It's very exciting. I mean, they pulled me onto a committee, I think about a year ago now. I've been in talks and meetings about it. And it's really cool because it's this group that wants to put on a league, start a league really in the right way. And they want it to be sustainable and successful. And it just, I mean, hopefully Athletes Unlimited also is successful and everything, but it hasn't been done before in the past. You know, there have been leagues that have tried and have failed. And it's just such a shame that with how big volleyball is in the US for girls. I mean, it's like the second biggest sport for youth in the US or something like that. And NCAA is so big, and we have so many incredible athletes that go on to play professional, but like not in their home. It's just wild to me that that's the only way we can make a living off of it. And there's just this huge gap in the market for this, and a place for someone to come in. And so that's what Love is doing. I'm on an athlete advisory committee for it. So it's some of us professional athletes, some from the national team, some who have played overseas for a few years, and we're in talks with them, figuring out priorities and what can make it successful. And the goal is to start pro play in 2024, spring of 2024. So that's the goal right now. And the planning part of it right now, hearing what they want to do with it, is extremely exciting. And I'm really excited to be a part of it, really. And I'm hoping it's successful. I feel like they're doing the right way. And if a league can be successful in the US, I think it's their league and how they're doing it for sure.
I read that there was some connection, there's going to be a connection to clubs. Could you share with me what your understanding of what that might be with volleyball clubs and its connection to this league?
Yeah, so that's kind of their path. They want to start a grassroots kind of thing in different cities and in buying up clubs, youth clubs, so that there's the natural flow, the natural pathway and support in a city. So in Portland, where I'm from, they're connecting with clubs and buying up clubs to have a pro team there, because the audience for a pro league is initially going to be girls playing. You know, there's such a huge market for that. There are millions of girls playing volleyball, and so what we want is to really hone in on that and create that audience. So that's kind of what they're doing right now, and that connection is really cool to think about, because right now young girls don't really have professionals to look up to. I mean, we're all playing overseas, so the young girls playing right now, they don't even know names of national team players. I never did growing up. And so they're trying to bridge that gap and to make it so that young girls are seeing what they could be when they're older, and making it a possibility that could have a career in volleyball. And they're not just doing that, but Love is creating opportunities for careers beyond volleyball for players. So it's very exciting, very, very exciting, I think.
Will that potentially bring you out of retirement in the volleyball world, or
you know, that's hard to see. I'm only 6 months out of playing, and I don't really have the desire to play right now. And it's hard to imagine getting my body in shape again to do that. But whether I'm playing or not, I want to be involved for sure. I think it's something really cool. I want to be involved in the sport, and I want to do anything I can to help the sport, to bring it to the US. So, yeah.
I just want to point out that you once took a year and a half off of indoor before, and it worked out pretty well. But
that's true. You never know. You never say never. I will never count it out completely.
You know, right? You got a lot on your plate. Well, I think that's so cool that, like you've articulated it, just what we're trying to do. It's such a popular sport in America. The numbers, you know, that watch the national title game, even some of the Big Ten matches have been off the chart this year. The sellout in Columbus, which didn't used to happen except when it was in Omaha. I mean, it's like you said, there's never been a time in America where it's more popular, and yet we have to go overseas. Even though a lot of other sports, soccer and basketball, for women, they're able to play them here in America. So I love the fact that you're trying to do it at a grassroots effort and not just impact professionals, but like you said, stuff beyond that, right? For life, when you're done playing professionally, what opportunities might that bring you? And certainly the more you learn the mental mindset team culture piece, helps you in life as well. So, well, gosh, we covered a lot today. Probably went a little longer than you anticipated, but you just had so much to say. And I felt like I knew you before today in a weird way, just because I talk about you every single day with teams, because I show them new team or some, at least a new team every week, your videos that you've been literally since 2014 now, because I used to show the Polish culture one all the time until this new one just came out, because this one's even better. And it's also more relevant to this time period. So any other thoughts that you have for my audience about anything that we didn't cover or anything else that you have on your mind? I want to make sure that, we've gone a long time, that I didn't leave anything obvious out that you wanted to make sure you said.
Yeah, I don't think I had anything. I mean, we covered a lot, and I just hope, I'm pretty sure we hammered home the importance of vulnerability and all these mindset kind of things. I just I can't emphasize it enough. I think it's incredible stuff, really important.
Well, there'll be people that think I paid you to talk about vulnerability because I'm as obsessed with it as you are. And I have an entire chapter in my book, Max Out Mindset, called The Power of Vulnerability. So kind of based on a lot of Brené Brown's work. But I mean, and because I'm obsessed with it with teams too, like I said, because you got to have enough talent. But at the end of the day, if you want to max out, there's got to be this deep connection and trust that's built. Unless you're one of those unique freak teams that come along every once in a while, and it's more in high school than anywhere else, where you could hate each other or not build the relationships and win. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. There's too much parity. So where are you going to get your edge? It's going to be training all those other things you mentioned, besides, crushing it in the gym and in the weight room and things like that. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. Your journey's been exciting. It's been filled with lots of highs, a few lows, but even through there was growth. And you got to stand at the top of the podium, which was Karch's dream, and really the dream of a lot of athletes before even your time that have been trying to do it for 50 some years to try to get to win a gold medal, and your team was the first to do it. So thank you so much for being on the Max Out Mindset podcast.
Thanks for having me. I so enjoyed this. Is stuff I love talking about. So I enjoyed it thoroughly. Thanks.